on going over some journal entries, so you guys got kind of a feel for, how journals are important in history. Well, we're going to move on from that, and we're going to apply kind of what we learned from the PowerPoint, and I've been discussing this idea that the American dream for African Americans kind of started with the Great Migration. And next week we're going to go into the Harlem Renaissance, and that'll reflect more on this, but before we do that, I'm going to end this lesson with a really awesome video that I found. It intermixes pictures from the Great Migration and from slavery times, but also with pictures of Martin Luther King Jr. and Rosa Parks to kind of get that idea that it started with the Great Migration, them wanting a better life for themselves. But before we go into there, I passed out this worksheet, and there are some questions I want you to answer while watching the video. Most of them are pretty much opinion, and that's kind of what this is about. This is not set in stone. It does not say in a history book that the Great Migration is directly linked to the American dream, but history is up for interpretation. So I want to get you guys' interpretation of how you think these two can be linked after you watch this video, and applying what you learned from the PowerPoint and from the journal entries that we did earlier in class. And also, while you're watching this video, try to think of what your dream is. It's not necessarily related to, rights or anything, but like everyone has a dream of something either better, they want to go to college, they want to become a ballerina. Everyone has some kind of dream, and that's going to be your homework assignment. So when you're watching this video, keep that in mind. It's on the back of your worksheet, your video worksheet. It says, what's your dream? Why do you have this dream? What are the obstacles you'll have to get through to reach that goal? And how do obstacles create dreams, in your opinion? Obstacles create a need for something better. So that's kind of related to the Great Migration and the American dream. So just think about that, and we'll discuss that later. But first, we're going to watch this video. Heather, if you want to do the lights for me. How they kind of all connect. I tried to point out some things. It was a little fast, but I tried to do my best. To point how the Great Migration can be linked to the fight for rights that Martin Luther King Jr. and Rosa Parks and other famous African Americans fought for. So I'm going to get your opinion. I want to see how you in your own words can kind of describe that link. So we're going to start with Chris. Can you explain kind of the connection? How you feel the connection can be made between the Great Migration and the fight for African American rights?
The Great Migration started the fight for their rights, basically, because all the African Americans traveled to northern cities where they accepted them, but yet they still separated them, so they were still fighting for freedom, essentially.
Awesome, you made a great point. First they got the abolishment of slavery, which was an amazing step forward for African Americans. But then when they started to move to the north, there was also segregation. So you have to keep that in mind, that segregation created the fight for African American rights, because they said, okay, hey, we got over this hurdle, let's get over the next hurdle. So it kind of all leads into the next thing. You go to slavery, the Great Migration, the Harlem Renaissance, and then it all kind of leads into Martin Luther King Jr. and the fight for it. Does anybody else want to add to that? We kind of all get grasping the idea of it? Alright, since we watched that video and it pretty much wraps up the Great Migration as a whole, and we're going to move into the Harlem Renaissance next. Before we do that, I want to make sure that you guys remember what my objectives were for you.
The bottom.
The bottom one.
I think that was mine.
What is?
It might say green.
Oh, it's the second
This
one.
one.
Okay.
Alright, thank you. Alright. Okay, so I'm going to ask you guys questions just so I can kind of get an idea if you guys got the drift of my objectives and you guys accomplished those. So the first one was you'll be able to identify 2 reasons why the Great Migration occurred after the PowerPoint. So, who's the lucky winner this time? Aaron, can you identify at least one reason why the Great Migration occurred?
They're having economic problems in the South with like those and with like the way that they were, I can't remember the name for like how the sharecroppers, was that what it was? Like they weren't really able to get all the money from their work that they did.
Awesome. Heather, can you name one other reason?
I don't know if this is sort of like subjective, but I would say that a lot of ex-slaves left the South because they wanted to escape, like the places where they had been historically oppressed.
Right.
And so that led them to move north.
Exactly. It relates back to the Jim Crow laws, which we talked about in the past. Alright, so now we're going to look at the map. I remember during the PowerPoint, if you guys remember, I showed you guys a map. It had blue and red states highlighted. We're going to try to recognize some of those states or areas. Jordan, can you name either a state or a general area which had the most African Americans leave? It's a very simple question.
Where they left?
Where they left. They left.
Georgia.
Awesome, the South. That's where most left. Simple question, but some people don't realize that. Can anybody name a state that was kind of awkward, never really thought of that had a massive amount of African Americans move into their state? I remember I showed you the map and everyone was kind of surprised by the state.
California.
Awesome, perfect. California, that one had a lot because of mines and stuff like that. And obviously, since there was a lot lost in the South, they went north. Not so much the middle, but the north. And then after watching the video, we obviously discussed the American Dream and the Great Migration. So, you guys did an awesome job. You guys seem to really pick up on this stuff. So, but remember that you have your homework assignment. Does anybody have any questions about that before we close? No? Alright, I have one more thing for you guys to do. I want you to answer these 3 questions for me. When you finish with this, there's a couple minutes left in class. You can start working on your homework.